Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dark Tales of America. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video.
You don't notice a city changing when you live inside it. You notice rent going up. You notice the corner store changing owners. You notice the same pothole growing into a crater like it's trying to swallow your tire whole. But you don't notice a street moving, not until it moves you. I drive nights because nights don't ask questions. Nights don't look at you too long. Nights don't do that thing daytime people do where they act like your face is a receipt they're checking for mistakes. I start at 10 p.m. I stop when my body tells me to stop, usually around 4, sometimes 5, sometimes sunrise if I'm chasing a number that never gets caught. The city is called Harbor Point, which is funny because there hasn't been a harbor worth pointing at in decades. The water's there, sure, a black strip beyond the warehouses, thick as oil under the moon. But the jobs dried up, the boats stopped coming, the shipping cranes stand like dead metal dinosaurs with their necks bent. At night, Harbor Point is all sodium orange streetlights and wet asphalt, the kind of wet that doesn't just shine, it stares back. It was raining when I got the request. Not drizzle, not a polite little mist. Real rain, heavy rain that turns your wipers into desperate metronomes and your headlights into two weak hands pushing through a curtain. The app pinged. The sound is cheerful on purpose, like it wants to pretend you're not picking up strangers for money in a city that forgets its own missing people. New request. I glanced down. Pickup, Briarwood and 9th. Destination, : no destination. That happens sometimes. Older folks, tourists, people who don't know how to use the app. Usually they message right away. Usually it's an accident. But this one didn't have a message, no dot on the map either, just the intersection name floating on my screen like a label stuck to darkness. I should have declined. I know that now. At the time, I just thought, weird glitch, and then surge pricing. Money makes you generous with your instincts. I hit accept. The app didn't route me. It should have drawn the line, should have told me to take I-17 south, cut over near the hospital, avoid the construction by the rail spur. Instead, the screen stayed blank. My car icon sat in a gray nothing like it was parked outside the world. Then, under the pickup, a new line of text appeared. Route, : black. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because it felt like the only normal thing my body could do. Route black, like a setting you'd find in a horror game, like something you'd never want turned on. The rain hit harder, drumming on the roof so loud it sounded like fingers, the kind of rain that erases the line between the road and the river. I checked the time. 12:07 a.m. My night radio was low, some talk show where a guy with a smooth voice was arguing about whether ghosts could be scientific. I wasn't listening. It was just something to keep the silence from becoming a person. The app pinged again, softer this time. A vibration. A message. Don't talk first. Don't look back too long. Don't stop under lights that flicker. No name, no profile picture, just the message. I should have declined right then, reported it, closed the app, drove home and locked my door, and slept until my mind smoothed this into a story I could tell myself later. Instead, I stared at the rain and felt my skin tighten. Because that message wasn't a joke. It had weight, like someone had typed it with wet hands. I typed back, need destination. The typing bubble appeared on their end, then vanished, then appeared again, then vanished. Finally, one word came through. Just Drive. The app still didn't route me, but my car icon twitched, turned, like it was being tugged by an invisible string. And without thinking about it, I followed. I left the main strips with their late-night diners and neon beer signs. I passed the gas station where the clerk always watches me like I'm about to steal the air from the tires. I crossed into the older part of Harbor Point, where the houses lean in toward each other like they're sharing secrets. The rain made everything look freshly buried. At 12:19 a.m., I turned down a street I didn't recognize. That isn't unusual by itself. A city is a maze, and night makes even familiar blocks look new. But I've lived here most of my life. I've driven these streets for years. My mental map of Harbor Point is like an old scar, ugly but permanent. And this street wasn't on it. The sign said Briarwood in white letters, except the sign looked wrong, like it had been painted, then repainted, then scraped. The letters had a faint shadow under them, as if another word was still there, trying to show through. I slowed, craning forward. Behind Briarwood, barely visible in the wet shine, was a second name, a darker name, a name that wasn't quite erased. It looked like B-R-K, route. My throat tightened. My headlights washed over the houses. They were too still. No porch lights, no TV glow, no silhouettes crossing windows, just dark rectangles with curtains like eyelids shut tight. The app vibrated again. Arrived. I looked around. There was no one. I pulled to the curb at the corner of Briarwood and 9th. The rain hammered the windshield. My wipers thrashed back and forth like they were trying to escape. I waited. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Then, I saw movement. Not from a house, not from a porch.
From the gap between two buildings, an alley so narrow it looked like a tear in the world. A figure stepped out. No umbrella, no hood. Just a person walking slowly into the rain like the rain didn't exist. As they approached, my headlights caught their face, and my first thought wasn't man or woman. It was too pale. Not sickly pale, not makeup pale. Pale like paper left in a basement. They reached the passenger door and paused, staring down at the handle like they were remembering how doors work. Then they opened it and climbed in. The smell hit me immediately. Wet concrete, old pennies, and something else. Faint, sweet, rotting, like fruit left too long in a hot car. They didn't buckle their seatbelt. They just sat upright, hands folded in their lap, facing forward. I kept my eyes on the road. The message, "Don't talk first." So I didn't. The app still showed no destination. The pickup stayed on the screen like it was stuck. The passenger's reflection hovered faintly in my side window. I realized they were wearing a uniform. Not police, not security. Something older. A dark jacket with brass buttons, a small patch on the sleeve that looked like a ship's wheel or maybe a sunburst. The kind of uniform you'd see in a black and white photo of a factory from the 1930s. They turned their heads slowly toward me. I didn't look. I felt the weight of their gaze like a hand on my neck. Finally, in a voice that sounded like it had to travel through water to reach me, they spoke. "Mr. Miles." I gripped the wheel harder. Miles isn't my first name. It isn't my last name either. It's my middle name. The name I only see when I'm filling out forms at the DMV. The name my mother used when she was angry enough to make my childhood feel like a courtroom. No passenger should know that. I kept my eyes forward. The radio crackled. The talk show host's voice warped, stretched thin by static. For a second, it sounded like he was speaking backward. Then it snapped back to normal. The passenger continued, still calm. "You can start driving now." My mouth was dry. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Where to?" A silence. Not the awkward kind, the deliberate kind, like I'd failed a test. Then, "Route black will take us." The app pinged, and the map finally changed. A line appeared, not blue, not red, not green. Black. A thick black line like ink poured over the screen, running from Briarwood and 9th and curling into parts of the city that looked unfinished. Streets without names, blocks without labels, a blank area where the river should be. The route didn't follow roads, it cut across them, turned when it wanted, spelled something almost readable if you tilted your head. And under the route name, a new line appeared, like a warning. Estimated time, until paid. My chest went tight. I put the car in drive. We moved. At first, it was normal. Left at the stop sign, down a residential street, past a park with a chain-link fence and a playground that creaked in the wind. Then, the streetlights started to flicker. One by one. As we passed each light, it blinked. On, off, on, like it was taking a picture. I remembered the message. Don't stop under lights that flicker. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. The passenger's head turned slightly, like they were listening to something outside. The radio hissed again. I reached to turn it down. The passenger spoke gently. "Don't." My hand froze. I let it be. We drove under an overpass where the concrete above us was stained dark from years of exhaust and rain. Graffiti covered the pillars. The paint looked fresh, glossy with water. As we passed under, my headlights lit one of the pillars. The graffiti wasn't a tag. It was words. Tall, dripping letters. "If you can read this, you're on it." My stomach dropped like an elevator cable snapped. I kept driving. The passenger spoke again. "You're doing well." I didn't answer. My tongue felt like sandpaper.
The route line on the app pulsed. The thick black line widened, then narrowed, like it was breathing. We turned into an industrial area where warehouses crouched behind barbed wire fences. The rain made the fence shine like teeth. Then we reached a street that I knew didn't connect to anything. A dead end. I'd been here before. There's a gate, a warning sign, a chain padlocked so many times it looks like armor. But tonight, the gate was open. Not forced open, not broken. Open, like it had been waiting. I drove through. The city changed as soon as we passed the threshold. It's hard to explain. It wasn't like we crossed into another dimension with a flash of light or a thunderclap. It was subtler than that. The street got narrower. The buildings got closer. The air thickened. Even through the closed windows, I could smell damp stone like the inside of a tunnel. The app showed the black line pulling us forward, and the street signs, those green rectangles on metal poles, were blank. No names, no numbers, just green, empty, reflecting my headlights like dead eyes. The passenger's voice came again, quieter now. "Do you know what this city eats, Mr. Miles?" I swallowed. "No." A soft sound from them, almost a laugh. "It eats what people drop. It eats what people hide. It eats what people forget." I felt cold bloom under my ribs. We rolled past a row of storefronts that had no doors, no glass, just dark open mouths. In one of them, something moved. I saw it in the corner of my eye, a pale shape sliding back into shadow. I tightened my grip until my fingers hurt. The passenger didn't react. We approached an intersection. The streetlight above it flickered violently, buzzing like an insect trapped in a jar. Don't stop under lights that flicker. But the light was over the intersection. I had to stop or run the red. And the traffic light, hanging above the cross street, was red. My foot hovered over the brake. My heart hammered. The passenger turned their head toward me, slowly. Don't. The traffic lights stayed red. No cars came, no people, just rain and the buzz of the flickering streetlight above us like a failing heartbeat. I didn't stop. I drove through the red light, under the flickering lamp. The instant we passed beneath it, my headlights went out. Not dimmed, out. The dashboard lights died too. The radio cut into a flat line of silence. For a second, we were a moving coffin in the rain. Then, click, everything came back. My headlights snapped on. The dashboard glowed. The radio returned, but not to the talk show. It returned to a voice I recognized in a way that made my blood turn to ice. My own voice. It came through the speakers in a recording, grainy, distant, like it was being played from the bottom of a well. "Please," the voice said. My voice said. I didn't mean to. I didn't see him. I almost swerved. The passenger's hands remained folded. Their face remained forward. They spoke like they were reading from a script. "That's the toll, Mr. Miles. That's what Route Black collects first." I stared at the road, my vision blurring. The recording on the radio continued, my voice breaking, panicked. I didn't stop. I should have stopped. I should have. I slammed the power button on the radio. Nothing happened. The voice kept playing. I glanced at the passenger just for a moment, less than a second. Their face wasn't reflecting light the way it should. Their skin looked too smooth. Their eyes were dark pools that didn't catch my headlights. And in the brief instant I looked, I saw something in the corner of the passenger's mouth. A line, not a smile, a crack.
Like porcelain that had been dropped. I snapped my gaze back to the road. The passenger whispered, almost kindly, "You're going to remember tonight." The black line on the app pulsed again. We turned, and the street ahead dipped downward into a tunnel I'd never seen before, brick-lined, circular, dripping water like sweat. A tunnel that smelled like the inside of a storm drain. Above the tunnel entrance, in faded letters, barely visible under grime, was a sign. Harbor Point Municipal Works. Authorized personnel only. But someone had written something underneath in fresh, bright paint. Welcome back. My mouth went numb. I slowed. The passenger's voice hardened for the first time. Do not stop. I didn't want to go in. Every animal part of me screamed to turn around, to reverse, to crash into a wall if that's what it took to avoid that tunnel. But the road behind me didn't look the same anymore. The warehouses were gone. The intersection I'd come from was now a blank wall of brick, like the city had sealed itself shut behind us. There was only forward. I drove into the tunnel. The sound changed immediately. Rain became a muffled roar above us. The tires hissed on wet concrete, and underneath it all, faint but constant, was another sound. A deep, slow thump, like a heart. The tunnel curved and my headlights swept over the walls. There were markings there, scratches, tallies, messages carved into brick by hands that needed to leave proof they were here. Names, dates, some old enough to be history, and one that made my stomach twist. Because it was carved into the brick at eye level, fresh and sharp like it had been done tonight. Miles L. First run. I almost hit the brakes. The passenger leaned slightly toward me. I felt them close, like cold breath. "Keep driving," they said, "or you'll see what happens when Root Black loses patience." The tunnel bent again, and ahead in my headlights I saw something standing in the center of the road. A person. No. Two people. No. A cluster. A group of shapes too still, too close together like mannequins left in the rain. As I got closer, I realized they weren't in the road. They were hanging from the ceiling, suspended by something thin and dark, swaying gently with the airflow. I didn't scream. My body forgot how. The passenger spoke, calm as ever. "Don't look back too long," they reminded me. And that's when I understood. This wasn't a warning to protect the passenger. It was a warning to protect me. Because in the rearview mirror, just barely visible in the darkness behind us, I saw the tunnel wasn't empty anymore. Something was following. Something low and wide, moving like a spill. And as the radio played my voice confessing to a crime I'd tried to bury in my own mind, the thing behind us made a sound like wet fabric tearing, and my headlights flickered.
I didn't look back. Not because I'm brave, because the passenger said not to, and the part of me that still believed in rules clung to that like a life raft. My headlights flickered again, once, twice, then steadied. The tunnel kept curving, brick walls sweating rust-colored water. The air felt thicker down there, like it had weight, like each breath cost something. On the radio, my own recorded voice kept going. I didn't see him. He came out of nowhere. It was raining. I swallowed hard. My palms were slick on the wheel. I pressed the power button again. Nothing. The passenger's hands were still folded, perfectly still, like a statue posed for a photograph. "What is that playing?" I managed, keeping my eyes on the road. They didn't answer immediately. Their head turned just a fraction, as if they were listening to the radio too, enjoying it. Then they said, "Root Black collects what you keep." A pause. "It starts with truth, small pieces at first." The tunnel lights, old fixtures bolted to the ceiling, buzzed and sputtered as we passed under them. Every few yards, one would brighten sharply, then fade, like it couldn't decide whether to reveal us or hide us. I focused on the lane line. There wasn't one. Just wet concrete, and the sense that if I drifted too far left or right, I'd touch the wall and something would touch back. The hanging shapes ahead swayed gently in my headlights. They were farther than I'd thought, strung out along the curve, like decorations someone had taken way too seriously. I didn't want to see them clearly. That felt like the point. My hands trembled anyway. "Are they—" I started. The passenger cut in, soft but firm. "Eyes forward, Mr. Miles." So I obeyed. And still, my brain filled in details my eyes didn't need to confirm. Limbs, clothing plastered by water, hair dangling. They rotated slowly as we approached, turning like wind chimes in a storm drain. The radio crackled. The recording shifted. My voice faded out, replaced by another sound. A woman crying. Not loud, not hysterical. The quiet kind of crying that means someone ran out of strength hours ago. Then a man's voice, distant, pleading, "Please, I have a kid." My stomach flipped. It wasn't just my confession. It was other people, other nights, other mistakes. The passenger's tone stayed calm. "Root Black keeps a ledger." "What does that mean?" I asked. No answer, not right away. We passed under the first hanging body. I caught a glimpse without meaning to. Side vision, instinct, the way your mind searches for threats even when you tell it not to. The person's shoes were gone. Bare feet, gray-white, toes curled like they'd tried to grip air. And on the sole of one foot, there was writing. Black marker, thick strokes, as if someone had labeled them for storage. Paid.
My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I drove on. More bodies, more swaying. Each one different height, different build, different clothing, some modern, some old. One wore a puffy jacket with a sports logo. Another wore a coat with shoulder pads like something from decades ago. Every one I saw, every foot that turned just right, had the same word: paid. The tunnel curved again, and finally the hanging shapes ended. The air changed, warmer, more humid. It smelled like algae and metal, and something organic, like a wet mouth. The road dipped deeper. I didn't realize we were going downhill till my ears popped. The passenger's voice came again, almost conversational. "You're wondering what your fare is." I didn't answer, but my silence must have been loud enough. They continued. "People think fare means money. In Harbor Point, it means what you can endure." A pause. "It means what you can lose and still keep driving." The app buzzed in its mount on my dashboard. I glanced at it. A black bar had appeared across the bottom of the screen. Not a loading bar, a progress bar, and it was filling slowly from left to right. Above it were words: "Fare, 0% paid." I almost laughed again, a short, ugly sound. "This is insane," I whispered. The passenger's head tilted slightly. "Is it?" I thought of the radio recording. My voice, panicked, the thing behind us in the mirror like a spill crawling forward. I thought of the brick wall that hadn't been there before, sealing the street behind me. And I realized something. The city wasn't asking me to believe in anything. It was demonstrating. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. The passenger finally said the word I'd been waiting for, like a priest giving a blessing. "Home." My jaw clenched. "This isn't not the home you lock your door in. The home the city built for you."
The tunnel widened. The brick gave way to poured concrete. The ceiling rose, and the sound, that deep, slow thump, became clearer. Not mechanical, not an echo of traffic overhead. It had rhythm. It had patience. It sounded like something alive. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. My headlights swept across pillars thick as tree trunks. Water pooled across the floor in shallow sheets, reflecting the light in broken patterns. And there were doors. That's the only word that fits. 100 doors, maybe more, set into the concrete walls at different heights, some with steps leading up, some at floor level, some half submerged in water like they belonged to drowned houses. Each door was different. Wood, metal, painted, unpainted. Some looked new enough to belong in an apartment building. Others looked ancient, warped by damp, studs exposed. Every door had a number. Not street numbers, not apartment numbers. Longer, like a case file, like an entry. 02117, 14403, 0008, 09166. My headlights caught one door that made my stomach go cold, because the number on it wasn't 5 digits, it was 3 letters, MLS. My fingers went numb. The passenger spoke softly. "Do you see it?" I didn't want to answer, but I couldn't help it. "Yes." "Good," they said. "That means it recognizes you." My throat went tight. "What is this place?" The passenger's voice lowered, reverent. "This is where Harbor Point keeps what it can't file, what it can't solve, what it can't admit." The radio, still playing those voices, dipped into static. Then a new voice came through. An old man, raspy, like he'd been smoking in the rain for 50 years. "Turn around," the voice said. It was not my voice. It was not a passenger's voice. It sounded like it was speaking from inside the tunnel itself. "Turn around," it repeated, louder. My skin crawled. The passenger didn't flinch. They only said, Do you hear that? I swallowed. Yes. That's not for you, they said, almost reassuring. That's for what's behind us. A ripple moved across the water pooled on the floor, not from our tires, from the far end of the chamber, the tunnel mouth we'd come through. The water trembled as if something huge had disturbed it. I kept my eyes forward, but my mirror showed the dark tunnel behind us, and in that darkness, something reflected a faint shine. Not eyes, not exactly, more like wet surfaces catching light, multiple points, shifting, a shape too wide for the tunnel, yet somehow fitting into it, like a slug forced through a pipe. The passenger spoke, calm as ever. If you look at it, it learns you faster. I stared ahead, forcing my breathing to stay even. The app buzzed again. Fare, 12% paid. I blinked. How? The passenger said, You crossed a flicker and didn't stop. That cost you something. A pause. Did you feel it? I tried to remember the moment we went under that buzzing streetlight, the instant the car went dark. My mind skated away from it, like it didn't want to touch it. No, I lied. The passenger's voice went softer. You did. You just don't know what yet. My chest tightened. The chamber felt like a waiting room, like the city had brought me here to choose something. The passenger lifted one hand for the first time, pointing, not at the door marked MLS, at a door 2 rows down, half hidden behind a pillar. Its number was 08014. Something about that number punched me in the stomach with familiarity I couldn't place. The passenger said, That one. My mouth dried. What's behind it? Your destination and your fare. I stared at the door. It was plain wood, swollen with moisture. The handle was brass, tarnished green at the edges. On the doorframe, carved into the concrete, were small scratch marks, tallies.
Hundreds of them, like someone had been counting days, or trips, or people. The radio hissed, and my confession came back again, sharper now. I didn't stop, my voice said. I didn't stop, and I heard him. I shut my eyes for half a second. A flash of memory slipped through in that darkness. A wet street, a figure in the headlights, the sickening bump. A scream cut off too quickly. My eyes snapped open. The passenger's head turned toward me slowly. Ah, they said. There it is. My heart hammered. No, that's not... But the memory was already blooming, pulling details out of the dark. Not just a bump, a small body, a bike on its side, a red reflector spinning, a child's shoe in the rain. My breath hitched. I hadn't thought about that night in years, not fully. I'd filed it away in a part of my mind labeled accident and pressed down until the label felt true. The passenger watched me like a doctor watching a monitor. Harbor Point remembers, they said, even when you don't. The app buzzed again. Fare, 23% paid. My voice trembled. So you're punishing me? The passenger's cracked mouth line curled slightly, not quite a smile. No, they said. We're balancing. The chamber's overhead lights flickered in sequence, like a wave running through them. The water rippled again. Behind me, in the mirror, the darkness at the tunnel mouth bulged. Something pressed forward, eager. The old man's voice on the radio hissed through static again. Turn around. The passenger spoke, almost bored. It's hungry tonight. My knuckles were white on the wheel. What is it? I whispered. The passenger answered in a voice that sounded older than their uniform. The collector. A pause. And you brought it with you. The progress bar on my app surged, filling faster.
Fare, 30% paid. Then the screen flashed a new instruction. Stop vehicle, open passenger door. My stomach lurched. The passenger looked straight ahead. They didn't move. They didn't reach for the handle. They said quietly, "Now you learn the next rule." I swallowed. What rule? Their voice dropped to a whisper. Route black doesn't take you where you want to go. A beat. It takes you where you're owed. The app buzzed again. Warning. Driver non-compliance will be collected. My blood went cold. The tunnel mouth behind us warped as something huge pushed itself out, dragging darkness like a curtain. The water on the floor began to flow, not toward the drain, not downhill, toward us, like the chamber was inhaling. The passenger finally turned their head toward me, and when they spoke, their voice wasn't watery anymore. It was crisp, commanding. Open the door. I stared at the passenger door handle. My hand lifted, shaking, reaching across the console. And then the cabin lights blinked, just once. But in that blink, I saw the passenger's reflection in the side window shift. Not a pale human face, something flatter, wider. The suggestion of features arranged wrong, like a mask trying to remember what it's meant to imitate. The lights came back. The passenger looked normal again, but their hands were no longer folded. They were resting on their knees, fingers spread, nails dark with something that didn't look like dirt. I pulled my hand back. "I'm not opening it," I said, voice breaking. The passenger's gaze stayed forward. "Then Route Black will open something else." The old man's voice on the radio screamed through static, "Don't let it in!" And in the mirror, the collector slid fully into the chamber. Huge, low, glistening, dragging itself across the wet concrete toward our car. The app buzzed one last time. Fare due, first payment. And the passenger whispered, almost kindly, "Don't look back too long." Because something behind me, inside my own back seat, exhaled right against my ear.
The breath against my ear wasn't warm. It wasn't even cold. It was damp, like air pulled from the bottom of a drain. I didn't turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed to whip my head and look, to confirm the shape, the teeth, the whatever it was sitting inches behind me. But the passenger's rule snapped through my panic like a seatbelt locking. Don't look back too long. So I stared at the windshield so hard my eyes watered. The chamber lights buzzed. Somewhere far above, water dripped in a slow, deliberate rhythm, like someone tapping a finger on a table while they waited for you to answer. In my rearview mirror, the tunnel mouth was no longer just darkness. It bulged. It moved. The collector slid out like a spill learning gravity, low, wide, glistening, not quite a solid creature, not quite liquid, like something that had decided to wear the idea of a body. The pooled water on the floor flowed toward it, not splashing, not rippling, obeying. The old voice on the radio, ragged and urgent, crackled through static. "Don't let it in!" My hands clenched the wheel until my wrists ached. The engine idled, vibrating under me, a small, fragile shell in a place that didn't feel made for humans. The app on my dash buzzed again. Stop vehicle, open passenger door, fare due, first payment. My throat was too dry for words. The passenger sat perfectly still, staring ahead as if none of this mattered to them, as if the collector wasn't inching closer across the wet concrete.
I couldn't see it clearly without looking back too long, but I didn't need the details. I could hear it. A sound like wet fabric dragged across tile. A faint pop now and then, like bubbles breaking under a thick skin. And under that, faint, hungry clicking, the way a dog's nails tap the floor when it thinks you're holding food. The passengers spoke quietly, as if they were afraid of waking something bigger. "You're thinking about running." "I am running. I'm leaving." I reached for the gear shift. The second my fingers touched it, the engine died. Not sputtered, not coughed, died, like a switch had been flipped. The dashboard went dark. The headlights clicked off. For half a second, I sat in total blackness, listening to rain far above and the thick, wet movement drawing closer. Then the dash lit back up, not with my normal display, with the app. My entire screen, my phone and the car display it mirrored, filled with one word, huge and black: no. The passenger's head tilted slightly, like they were amused. Route Black doesn't like bargaining, it likes payment. The old voice on the radio pleaded again, quieter now, like it was tiring. "Please, please, don't open it." The passenger didn't react. I stared at the door handle on the passenger side. Brass, tarnished, ordinary, the kind of handle you'd grab without thinking on a normal night. But nothing about this was normal. The app buzzed again. "Warning, driver non-compliance will be collected." I swallowed. Collected how? The passenger turned their head toward me. I didn't look directly at their eyes. I couldn't, not after that flicker earlier, not after seeing the reflection shift like a mask sliding. But I saw the edge of their face, the faint crack at the corner of their mouth. Their voice was gentle, like the others. My stomach rolled. I thought of the hanging bodies in the tunnel, bare feet, the word paid written on the sole like a final stamp. I started, then stopped. My tongue felt too big. My mind kept flashing that memory. Headlights, rain, a small bicycle, a red reflector spinning like a coin on a table. The passenger whispered, "First payments are always the easiest thing to take." I frowned. Easiest? They nodded once. A name, a day, a face, something you won't notice missing until you need it. The collector slid closer. The pooled water around my tires began to flow toward the passenger door, as if pulled by a drain. Then the cabin filled with another smell. Not the tunnel's damp rot. This smell was personal, like my grandmother's house after she'd been gone too long. Dust and old soap and something sweet decaying in the walls. It made my eyes sting. I heard that damp exhale again behind me, closer. My skin crawled, the hairs on my arms rose. The old voice on the radio wasn't just pleading anymore. It was crying. "I paid already. I paid. Why won't it stop?" The passenger said, almost impatient, "Stop listening." But I couldn't stop, because the voice on the radio, beneath the static, was starting to sound familiar. Not my voice, not the passenger's, a voice from my past, a man I hadn't thought about in years, my friend Marcus, the one who stopped answering texts, the one people eventually stopped asking about. The radio crackled. "Tell my mom I slammed my fist into the radio panel. The sound cut for half a second.
The breath against my ear wasn't warm. It wasn't even cold. It was damp, like air pulled from the bottom of a drain. I didn't turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed to whip my head and look, to confirm the shape, the teeth, the whatever it was sitting inches behind me. But the passenger's rule snapped through my panic like a seatbelt locking. Don't look back too long. So I stared at the windshield so hard my eyes watered. The chamber lights buzzed. Somewhere far above, water dripped in a slow, deliberate rhythm, like someone tapping a finger on a table while they waited for you to answer. In my rearview mirror, the tunnel mouth was no longer just darkness. It bulged. It moved. The collector slid out like a spill learning gravity, low, wide, glistening, not quite a solid creature, not quite liquid, like something that had decided to wear the idea of a body. The pooled water on the floor flowed toward it, not splashing, not rippling, obeying. The old voice on the radio, ragged and urgent, crackled through static. "Don't let it in!" My hands clenched the wheel until my wrists ached. The engine idled, vibrating under me, a small, fragile shell in a place that didn't feel made for humans. The app on my dash buzzed again. Stop vehicle, open passenger door, fare due, first payment. My throat was too dry for words. The passenger sat perfectly still, staring ahead as if none of this mattered to them, as if the collector wasn't inching closer across the wet concrete. I couldn't see it clearly without looking back too long, but I didn't need the details. I could hear it. A sound like wet fabric dragged across tile, a faint pop now and then, like bubbles breaking under a thick skin. And under that, faint, hungry clicking, the way a dog's nails tap the floor when it thinks you're holding food. The passenger spoke quietly, as if they were afraid of waking something bigger. "You're thinking about running." "I am running. I'm leaving." I reached for the gear shift. The second my fingers touched it, the engine died. Not sputtered, not coughed, died, like a switch had been flipped. The dashboard went dark. The headlights clicked off. For half a second, I sat in total blackness, listening to rain far above and the thick, wet movement drawing closer. Then the dash lit back up, not with my normal display, with the app. My entire screen, my phone and the car display it mirrored, filled with one word, huge and black: no. The passenger's head tilted slightly, like they were amused. Route Black doesn't like bargaining, it likes payment. The old voice on the radio pleaded again, quieter now, like it was tiring. "Please, please, don't open it." The passenger didn't react. I stared at the door handle on the passenger side, brass, tarnished, ordinary, the kind of handle you'd grab without thinking on a normal night. But nothing about this was normal. The app buzzed again. Warning, driver non-compliance will be collected. I swallowed. Collected how? The passenger turned their head toward me. I didn't look directly at their eyes. I couldn't, not after that flicker earlier, not after seeing the reflection shift like a mask sliding. But I saw the edge of their face, the faint crack at the corner of their mouth. Their voice was gentle, like the others. My stomach rolled. I thought of the hanging bodies in the tunnel, bare feet, the word paid written on the sole like a final stamp. I started, then stopped. My tongue felt too big. My mind kept flashing that memory. Headlights, rain, a small bicycle, a red reflector spinning like a coin on a table. The passenger whispered, "First payments are always the easiest thing to take." I frowned. Easiest? They nodded once. A name, a day, a face, something you won't notice missing until you need it. The collector slid closer. The pooled water around my tires began to flow toward the passenger door, as if pulled by a drain. Then the cabin filled with another smell. Not the tunnel's damp rot. This smell was personal, like my grandmother's house after she'd been gone too long. Dust and old soap and something sweet decaying in the walls. It made my eyes sting. I heard that damp exhale again behind me, closer.
My skin crawled, the hairs on my arms rose. The old voice on the radio wasn't just pleading anymore, it was crying. "I paid already. I paid. Why won't it stop?" The passenger said, almost impatient, "Stop listening." But I couldn't stop, because the voice on the radio, beneath the static, was starting to sound familiar. Not my voice, not the passenger's, a voice from my past, a man I hadn't thought about in years. My friend Marcus, the one who stopped answering texts, the one people eventually stopped asking about. The radio crackled. "Tell my mom I slammed my fist into the radio panel. The sound cut for half a second.
But not because of skin, because it looked like it had been painted on. A suggestion of cheeks, a suggestion of lips, and at the corners of their mouth, the cracks ran deeper now, spidering outward. They smiled. It was wrong, too wide, too still. "You paid with the sound," they whispered. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I tried to say my name again. Nothing. My brain reached for it and found a blank space, like a ripped-out page. The woman on the phone went quiet. Then she spoke again, cautious now. "Wait, who is this?" I opened my mouth. I couldn't answer, because without my name, I didn't know how to introduce myself. The passenger spoke, calm as ever. "Hang up." I did, hands shaking. Immediately, the app flashed a new line of text. "Payment accepted. Driver name removed." I stared at it until my vision blurred. "Removed," I whispered. The passenger nodded. "You won't miss it until you need someone to remember you." The collector behind us made a sound, an annoyed, wet shudder, like it had been expecting more. The pooled water on the floor stopped flowing toward it and began to recede, slipping back across the concrete as if the chamber was exhaling. The pressure eased. The air felt less thick. My engine turned over by itself, like a hand had turned the key. The headlights brightened. The radio went dead quiet. No confession, no pleading voice, just silence. The app buzzed again. Route black continues. A thick black line drew itself across the map, curling toward one of the doors in the chamber. Not the one marked MLS, not the one that had felt familiar. A different door, near the far wall, painted a faded blue that looked too clean for this place. Its number, 00001. My stomach sank. "Is that?" I started. The passenger's voice was almost respectful. "The first file," they said. "The one the city was built on." I stared at the door, at the paint that didn't match anything else in the room. The handle was new, shiny, like someone had been using it recently. The passenger spoke again, very softly. "And now you get your second instruction." I swallowed. "What?" They leaned close enough that I felt that damp breath again. "Open that door," they whispered, "and don't scream when you see what's inside." The chamber lights flickered, not in a wave this time, just above door 00001. On, off, on. And the app added a final warning under the route line. "Do not stop under flickering lights." My foot pressed the brake without thinking. The instant the car slowed, the flickering light above door 00001 brightened, and a shadow moved behind the door. Something pressed against it from the inside. Not a hand, a face, flat against the wood like it was trying to push through. And as my car rolled to a near stop beneath that flickering light, a voice came from inside the door, muffled, frantic, unmistakably human. "Help me," it said. Then, in a whisper that made my blood turn to ice, "Evan?"
The man ran. He didn't scream, he didn't look back. He just ran, like his body had already decided before his mind could catch up. The broken streetlight above him flickered violently, sparks spitting into the rain. The asphalt around the storm drain began to tremble, water vibrating in its grooves like something underneath was breathing too fast. The app pulsed red. Subject aware, escalation protocol active. My foot twitched toward the brake. The passenger's voice cut through me instantly. "Don't interfere." "I'm not," I said, too fast. "I'm just—" "You're watching," they finished. "That's enough." The man reached the corner, slipped, caught himself on a mailbox. He looked back, not at the drain, at me. His eyes locked onto the headlights, wide with understanding so sudden and complete it felt like a punch to my chest. He knew. Not what was happening, but that I was part of it. "Help me!" he screamed. The sound echoed strangely, like the city itself was absorbing it instead of letting it travel. The storm drain cover shifted. Metal scraped on concrete. Slow, heavy. Something pushed from below. The app chimed again, calm now, procedural. Subject flight confirmed. Collection method, direct. "No," I whispered. "That's not— he hasn't done anything." The passenger didn't look at me. "Awareness is enough," they said. "Once they see the seams, they destabilize the map." The drain cover lifted, not flipped, lifted straight up, as if pulled by invisible hands. Darkness yawned beneath it, thick, layered, moving. A hand came out first. Too long, too many joints. It gripped the edge of the pavement, fingers flattening as weight transferred upward. The man stumbled backwards, sobbing now, voice cracking. "I didn't tell anyone," he cried. "I swear, please, I didn't." The collector rose higher. This close to the surface, it looked less like a spill and more like a body assembled incorrectly. Its shape shifted with every movement, struggling to decide what it needed to be to fit through the hole. The passenger spoke quietly. "Watch closely. Dispatch training requires observation." I shook my head violently. "I won't." "You already are." The man turned and ran again. Too late. The collector lunged, not fast, but inevitable. Its mass flowed forward, splitting around obstacles, reforming instantly. It touched his ankle. That was all it needed. He screamed once, then his voice cut off like a wire had been snipped. The collector folded around him, enveloping, absorbing. The shape thrashed once, twice, then stilled. The streetlight above them went dark, permanent this time. The drain cover slid back into place. The rain continued like nothing had happened. No blood, no sign, no man. The app chimed. Collection complete. Case status resolved. My stomach twisted painfully. I gagged, dry heaving against the steering wheel. The passenger waited until my breathing steadied. "You didn't cause this," they said, evenly. "You prevented a spread." I laughed, a short, broken sound. "You call that prevention?" They finally looked at me. Up close, their eyes weren't empty. They were full, crowded, like 1,000 reflections layered on top of one another. "Yes," they said, "because if he'd escaped, he would have told someone." The radio clicked on, a different news voice this time.
Authorities responding to reports of a disturbance near 8th and Calder. Witnesses describe hearing shouting but found no evidence of an altercation. Police believe it was likely a false report. False report. The words rang hollow. The app updated. Fare 61% paid. A new section unlocked beneath it. Driver history. I didn't touch the screen. It opened anyway. Names scrolled past.
Not names like mine. Fragments. Redacted. Removed. Unfiled. Each entry had a timestamp. Each timestamp matched a year. Some went back decades. One stopped me cold. Active driver, 1997 to 2003. Status: reassigned. I swallowed. Reassigned where? The passenger answered softly. Below. The city grid shifted again. More red dots appeared, but these were different. They were clustered, all in one area. An area the map labeled Depot. My chest tightened. What is that? The passenger folded their hands again, returning to that calm, unreadable posture, where drivers go when they stop paying. The car slowed. I hadn't told it to. Ahead, the street narrowed into an underpass I knew well. Too well. I drove through it every night. Concrete walls stained black with runoff. A low clearance sign that always flickered. Graffiti layered so thick you could see old tags ghosting through new ones. Except tonight, the graffiti was gone. The walls were bare, clean, and etched into the concrete every few feet were tallies. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Each mark scratched deep. The app buzzed. Optional review available. A window popped up. Last driver feedback. I didn't want to open it, but my finger moved anyway. Text appeared. Simple. Unformatted. I thought if I kept my head down, it wouldn't notice. I was wrong. It always notices. The underpass lights flickered. My heart skipped. Don't stop, the passenger warned casually. I'm not, I said through clenched teeth. But the car slowed anyway. The underpass seemed longer than it should have been. The exit stayed distant. The air grew heavy again. Familiar now. The sound returned. That deep, slow thump. Dispatch spoke. Not layered this time. Singular. Close. You're doing well. I flinched. You said dispatch was what remains. Yes, the passenger said. And soon you'll help maintain it. The app buzzed violently. New pickups assigned. Multiple. 3 red dots flashed. All at once. Different locations. Different times. 12:57 a.m. 12:57 a.m. 12:57 a.m. I stared. That's impossible. The passenger smiled thinly. So were you, once. The radio cut in. Not news. Not static. Voicemares. Multiple. Overlapping. Different voices. Different ages. All saying the same thing in slightly different ways. Hey, it's me. I'm outside. Did I get the right car? Please. Please don't leave. My vision blurred. I can't do this, I whispered. The passenger leaned close, their voice dropping to something intimate. You already are. The underpass finally ended. The city opened up ahead, but it wasn't right. Street signs showed conflicting names. Buildings overlapped slightly like misaligned layers.
people stood still on sidewalks for just a fraction too long before moving again. Dispatch spoke one last time. Final evaluation phase approaching. The app updated. Fare: 66% paid. Beneath it, a new title appeared. Driver status: probationary dispatch. My hands shook. What happens at 100%? I asked. The passenger didn't answer immediately. They looked forward, out at the broken city. When they finally spoke, their voice was almost respectful. At 100%, they said, you stop asking questions. The car turned on its own, toward the first of the 3 red dots, and somewhere, deep beneath the road, the collector shifted, awake again.
The voicemail ended with a click. Silence rushed in to fill the space it left behind. I sat there gripping the wheel, heart pounding, trying to understand what I'd just heard. The voice on the radio was mine, but not the one Root Black had taken. This one was younger, casual, alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. The timestamp glowed on the dash. Today, 12:41 a.m. The passenger watched me closely now. Not like before, not like a guide or a judge, like an employer. You stepped inside, they said. That accelerated things. My mouth felt numb. I didn't go anywhere. They nodded. Exactly. The chamber began to fade, not dissolve, not disappear, but withdraw, like a memory being pushed back where it belonged. The doors along the walls blurred, their numbers smearing into unreadable shapes. Door 00001 was gone entirely, leaving only bare concrete. The collector retreated, not willingly, dragged backward by something unseen, its wet mass stretching thin as it slid back into the tunnel. Before it vanished completely, it turned, and for the first time, I felt its attention land directly on me. Not hunger, recognition. The app chimed, a different sound than before, lower, slower, formal. The route map dissolved, replaced by a grid, a city grid, but not Harbor Point as I knew it. This version was layered, streets overlapping streets, intersections stacked like floors in a building. Some glowed faintly, others were dark, scratched through with black lines. Red dots began to appear. 1, 2, 5, 10, each labeled with a timestamp. 12:44 a.m., 12:46 a.m., 12:48 a.m. The passenger spoke quietly. Those are requests. I stared. I only accepted one. They smiled, not wide, not cracked. Professional. You don't accept requests anymore, they said. You assign them. A chill crawled up my spine. The car rolled forward on its own, out of the chamber, back into a tunnel that felt narrower now, compressed by understanding. Streetlights reappeared overhead, solid and ordinary. The road became asphalt again. Lane markings returned. We were back in the city, Harbor Point, but it looked tired. Buildings sagged under invisible weight. Neon signs flickered even when they shouldn't. A billboard advertising luxury condos showed a smiling family, but their faces were blurred, like the image hadn't finished loading. The app buzzed again. Incoming call. Dispatch. I didn't touch it. The passenger did. They reached forward and tapped the screen with one darkened fingernail. The call connected. A voice filled the car, not through the speakers, through the air itself, layered, multiple tones speaking in perfect synchronization.
Driver active. Fare threshold exceeded. Role reassessment complete. My pulse hammered. Who is that? The passenger turned to me fully. Up close, I could see their uniform more clearly now. It wasn't fabric. It was stitched together from different eras. Police buttons from the 40s, transit patches from the 70s, reflective strips like modern safety gear. Symbols layered on top of symbols until none of them meant what they used to. This is dispatch, they said, or what remains of it. The voice continued. Asset viability confirmed. Memory elasticity high. Moral resistance moderate. I clenched my jaw. I'm not an asset. The passenger almost laughed. That's what all the good ones say. Outside, the city moved normally, or tried to. Cars passed us going the opposite direction, their drivers unaware of the layered map glowing on my dash. Pedestrians walked with heads down, umbrellas up, phones glowing. And then, one of them looked up, straight at me.
A woman standing on the corner outside a closed laundromat, early 30s, dark hair plastered to her face by rain. She stared at my car, eyes widening. She mouthed something, a name. My chest seized. She ran toward the street, waving. "Hey!" she shouted. "Wait!" The light turned green. The car accelerated without my input. I twisted in my seat, watching her shrink in the rearview mirror, her face panicked and confused. "She knows you," I said. The passenger nodded. "She remembers an earlier version." "That's not possible," I whispered. "I paid my name." "Yes," they agreed, "but not your impact." The app chimed. A new interface slid into place. Dispatch mode enabled. The city grid expanded. Red dots pulsed faster now, each one accompanied by a small data line. Case status, unresolved. Memory leak, active. Collection window, open. My hands trembled. What happens if I don't do anything? The passenger's voice was calm. Then the leaks spread. The radio turned on by itself. Local news. A frantic anchor spoke over shaky footage. A third disappearance this week in the Briarwood district. Authorities report no leads, no witnesses, and strangely, no official records of the missing individuals ever residing in the area. My stomach dropped. Briarwood. Route Black's pickup point. Dispatch spoke again. Assignment required. The app highlighted one red dot, closer than the others. A familiar street. A street I drove past every night. Pickup, 12:49 a.m. Subject status, aware. I shook my head. I'm not doing this. I didn't agree to... The passenger cut me off gently. You did, they said, when you chose time. The car slowed near the curb. Rain streaked the windows. A figure stood under a broken streetlight ahead, flickering, buzzing, stuttering. A man in a hoodie, pacing nervously, checking his phone over and over. The app flashed a warning, subject awareness increasing. What happens to him? I asked. The passenger answered honestly. He gets balanced. The man looked up, locked eyes with me. His face went pale. He backed away from the curb. No, he mouthed. The streetlight flickered harder. The collector stirred somewhere beneath the pavement. Dispatch spoke one final time. Begin instruction. The passenger leaned close to me, voice low and precise. Rule 1 of dispatch, they said. You don't decide who deserves it. The app buzzed. Confirm pickup. My finger hovered over the screen. The man turned and ran. The streetlight above him exploded in sparks, and from the storm drain at his feet, something began to rise.
The man ran. He didn't scream. He didn't look back. He just ran, like his body had already decided before his mind could catch up. The broken streetlight above him flickered violently, sparks spitting into the rain. The asphalt around the storm drain began to tremble, water vibrating in its grooves like something underneath was breathing too fast. The app pulsed red. Subject aware. Escalation protocol active. My foot twitched toward the brake. The passenger's voice cut through me instantly. "Don't interfere." "I'm not," I said, too fast. "I'm just—" "You're watching," they finished. "That's enough." The man reached the corner, slipped, caught himself on a mailbox. He looked back, not at the drain, at me. His eyes locked onto the headlights, wide with understanding so sudden and complete it felt like a punch to my chest. He knew. Not what was happening, but that I was part of it. "Help me!" he screamed. The sound echoed strangely, like the city itself was absorbing it instead of letting it travel. The storm drain cover shifted. Metal scraped on concrete. Slow, heavy, something pushed from below. The app chimed again, calm now, procedural. Subject flight confirmed. Collection method, direct. "No," I whispered. "That's not— he hasn't done anything." The passenger didn't look at me. "Awareness is enough," they said. "Once they see the seams, they destabilize the map." The drain cover lifted, not flipped, lifted straight up as if pulled by invisible hands. Darkness yawned beneath it, thick, layered, moving. A hand came out first. Too long, too many joints. It gripped the edge of the pavement, fingers flattening as weight transferred upward. The man stumbled backward, sobbing now, voice cracking. "I didn't tell anyone. I swear. Please, I didn't—" The collector rose higher. This close to the surface, it looked less like a spill and more like a body assembled incorrectly. Its shape shifted with every movement, struggling to decide what it needed to be to fit through the hole. The passenger spoke quietly. "Watch closely. Dispatch training requires observation." I shook my head violently. "I won't." "You already are." The man turned and ran again. Too late. The collector lunged, not fast, but inevitable. Its mass flowed forward, splitting around obstacles, reforming instantly. It touched his ankle. That was all it needed. He screamed once, then his voice cut off like a wire had been snipped. The collector folded around him, enveloping, absorbing. The shape thrashed once, twice, then stilled. The streetlight above them went dark, permanent this time. The drain cover slid back into place. The rain continued like nothing had happened. No blood, no sign, no man. The app chimed. Collection complete. Case status resolved. My stomach twisted painfully. I gagged, dry heaving against the steering wheel. The passenger waited until my breathing steadied. "You didn't cause this," they said evenly. "You prevented a spread." I laughed, a short, broken sound. "You call that prevention?" They finally looked at me. Up close, their eyes weren't empty. They were full, crowded, like 1,000 reflections layered on top of one another. "Yes," they said, "because if he'd escaped, he would have told someone." The radio clicked on. A different news voice this time. Authorities responding to reports of a disturbance near 8th and Calder. Witnesses describe hearing shouting but found no evidence of an altercation. Police believe it was likely a false report. False report. The words rang hollow. The app updated. Fare, 61% paid. A new section unlocked beneath it. Driver history. I didn't touch the screen.
It opened anyway.
Names scrolled past. Not names like mine. Fragments. Redacted, removed, unfiled. Each entry had a timestamp. Each timestamp matched a year. Some went back decades. One stopped me cold. Active driver, 1997 to 2003. Status, reassigned. I swallowed. Reassigned where? The passenger answered softly. Below. The city grid shifted again. More red dots appeared, but these were different. They were clustered, all in one area. An area the map labeled Depot. My chest tightened. What is that? The passenger folded their hands again, returning to that calm, unreadable posture. Where drivers go when they stop paying. The car slowed. I hadn't told it to. Ahead, the street narrowed into an underpass I knew well, too well. I drove through it every night. Concrete walls stained black with runoff. A low clearance sign that always flickered. Graffiti layered so thick you could see old tags ghosting through new ones. Except tonight, the graffiti was gone. The walls were bare, clean. And etched into the concrete every few feet were tallies. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Each mark scratched deep. The app buzzed. Optional review available. A window popped up. Last driver feedback. I didn't want to open it, but my finger moved anyway. Text appeared. Simple, unformatted. I thought if I kept my head down, it wouldn't notice. I was wrong. It always notices. The underpass lights flickered. My heart skipped. Don't stop, the passenger warned casually. I'm not, I said through clenched teeth. But the car slowed anyway. The underpass seemed longer than it should have been. The exit stayed distant. The air grew heavy again, familiar now. The sound returned, that deep, slow thump. Dispatch spoke. Not layered this time. Singular. Close. You're doing well. I flinched. You said dispatch was what remains. Yes, the passenger said. And soon, you'll help maintain it. The app buzzed violently. New pickups assigned, multiple. 3 red dots flashed, all at once. Different locations, different times. 12:57 a.m., 12:57 a.m., 12:57 a.m. I stared. That's impossible. The passenger smiled thinly. So were you once. The radio cut in. Not news, not static. Voicemails. Multiple. Overlapping. Different voices. Different ages. All saying the same thing in slightly different ways. Hey, it's me. I'm outside. Did I get the right car? Please, please don't leave. My vision blurred. I can't do this, I whispered. The passenger leaned close, their voice dropping to something intimate. You already are. The underpass finally ended. The city opened up ahead, but it wasn't right. Street signs showed conflicting names. Buildings overlapped slightly like misaligned wares.
People stood still on the sidewalks for just a fraction too long before moving again. Dispatch spoke one last time. Final evaluation phase approaching. The app updated. Fare, 66% paid. Beneath it, a new title appeared. Driver status, probationary dispatch. My hands shook. What happens at 100%? I asked. The passenger didn't answer immediately. They looked forward, out at the broken city. When they finally spoke, their voice was almost respectful. At 100%, they said, you stop asking questions. The car turned on its own, toward the first of the 3 red dots, and somewhere, deep beneath the road, the collector shifted, awake again.
The city didn't fade this time. It peeled. Buildings slid past each other like bad memories being rearranged. Street signs doubled, then tripled, each version pointing somewhere slightly different. The rain stopped falling straight and began drifting sideways, as if gravity itself was confused. The app's route turned downward. Not metaphorically, literally. A ramp appeared where a street should have been, sloping beneath an abandoned overpass I'd driven under 1,000 times. Tonight, the space beneath it was wider, deeper, hollow in a way it never had been before. A sign hung crooked at the entrance. No reflectors, no paint, just carved letters in raw concrete. Depot access. Authorized drivers only. My throat tightened. I've never seen this, I said. The passenger nodded. You were never meant to. The car rolled down the ramp. The air changed immediately. Cooler, damp, heavy with the smell of oil, rust, and something old enough to have forgotten sunlight. The sound of the city above faded into a dull hum, like traffic heard through a pillow. Then came the other sound. Engines. Not running. Idling. Hundreds of them. The ramp leveled out into a massive underground space that made the chamber with the doors feel small by comparison. The depot. Rows upon rows of cars stretched into darkness. Sedans, vans, old taxis, rideshare vehicles from companies that didn't exist anymore. Some looked intact. Others were rusted beyond recognition, half sunken into the concrete floor like fossils. Every car was occupied. Some drivers sat still, hands on the wheel, staring forward with eyes that reflected nothing. Others rocked gently, whispering to themselves. A few were still driving, wheels spinning uselessly against the concrete, engines revving as if the road might suddenly come back. My chest constricted. These are... I trailed off. Drivers. The passenger finished. Former. Current. Pending. I shook my head. They're alive. Some of them, they said. Others are close enough. The app buzzed softly. Location confirmed. Depot. Driver status. Temporary access granted. The car parked itself. The engine shut off. Silence rushed in. Thick and oppressive, broken only by distant engines and the occasional cough, sob, or muttered plea echoing through the vast space. I didn't want to get out. The door unlocked anyway. The passenger exited first. Up close, their uniform looked less like clothing and more like a collage. badges stitched over older badges, names scratched out and replaced. Some letters were so worn they were unreadable. They turned back to me. "Stay close," they said. "Some drivers forget they're not on a route anymore." I stepped out. The concrete floor was slick, not with water, but with a thin film of oil that reflected dim overhead lights. The lights weren't bulbs, more like veins glowing faintly through the ceiling. We walked. As we passed each car, I caught fragments of sound. "Just one more fare. GPS isn't updating. They said I could go home after this." A man in a yellowed taxi slammed his hands against the windshield as we passed. "Hey!" he screamed. "Do you have a map? Does your map still work?" I flinched. The passenger didn't even glance at him. "We don't engage," they said quietly. Farther in, we reached a cluster of cars that looked newer. One of them made my blood run cold. Same make as mine. Same color. Same dent on the rear bumper. I stopped dead. "That's—" "Yes," the passenger said. "A future possibility." Inside the car sat a man who looked older than me by decades. His hair was gray, his face sagged with exhaustion. But when he turned his head and looked at me, it was my face, or what it would become. His eyes widened. He lunged forward, slamming his palms against the glass. "Don't!" he screamed. "Don't finish it! Don't let it—" The passenger raised a hand. The car's interior lights snapped off. The man vanished into darkness. My knees went weak. "What happens to them?" I whispered. The passenger's voice was almost gentle. "They keep the city running." We reached a raised platform at the center of the depot. From here, I could see it all. Hundreds of drivers, thousands of tally marks carved in pillars, routes projected faintly in the air like ghost roads. Above the platform hung a massive display. Not a screen, a map. The entire city of Harbor Point rendered in shifting layers. Streets, tunnels, drains, forgotten alleys. Dark currents pulsed beneath it like veins. Dispatch spoke. Loud. Clear. Every driver in the depot fell silent. "You have reached the instructional threshold." The map zoomed in, highlighted a section beneath downtown. A massive, writhing shape embedded into the city's foundation. The collector, or rather, collectors, plural. They weren't creatures, they were organs, parts of a system built into the city itself, feeding on secrets, accidents, guilt, forgotten lives. Dispatch continued. "Cities grow heavy," it said. "They require removal of excess." The passenger turned to me. "At 100%, they said, you don't drive anymore." I swallowed. "Then what do I do?" They gestured to the depot. "You stay." My hands clenched. "I won't." The passenger studied me for a long moment. Then they said something unexpected. "Good." The app buzzed sharply. "Fare, 74% paid." A new notification appeared. "Anomaly detected." The map flickered. One of the red dots on the surface pulsed violently, brighter than the others. Dispatch's voice wavered for the first time. "Unscheduled awareness spike detected." The passenger stiffened. "That's not supposed to happen," they murmured. The red dot expanded. A name appeared beside it. Not mine, not erased, fully intact. Lena Morales. My heart stopped. That was the woman from the laundromat, the one who remembered me. The app flashed a warning. Subject remembers driver. Risk high. I whispered, "She knows." The passenger turned sharply. "Yes," they said, "and that's dangerous." The depot lights flickered. Several drivers screamed as their cars shook, engines revving wildly. Dispatch spoke again, strained. "Corrective action required." The app updated. "Special assignment. Dispatch override authorized." The route drew itself. Not black this time, red. The passenger looked at me. "This one's different," they said. "If she spreads what she knows." "I know." I cut in. The app vibrated. "Confirm elimination." My finger hovered. This wasn't balance. This wasn't maintenance. This was a cover-up. I looked at the drivers trapped in their cars, at my future self screaming behind glass, at the city map pulsing like a sick heart. Slowly, I lowered my hand. I'm not doing it. The depot went silent. Dispatch's voice dropped, losing all warmth. Refusal logged. The passenger stepped closer, their face finally losing its calm. "You don't understand what you're risking." "I do," I said. "I'm risking ending this." The map shook. The collectors beneath the city stirred violently. And for the first time since Route Black found me, I felt the city notice my resistance. The app flashed one final message in harsh white letters. "Driver status, non-compliant, initiating replacement protocol." Behind me, a car door opened, then another, then dozens more. Drivers began stepping out, all of them turning toward me, all of them smiling the same empty smile. And somewhere above, on the surface, Lena Morales looked at her phone and saw my face appear on the screen, with my name attached.
The first driver smiled, then the second, then the third. Their smiles weren't wide, weren't manic. They were practiced, the kind of expression you learn after years of pretending everything is fine. Car doors opened throughout the depot, one after another, the sound echoing like a chain of gunshots. Engines idled without drivers. Headlights flicked on, casting long shadows that twisted across the concrete. Every driver who stepped out turned toward me, all at once. Dispatch spoke, stripped of ceremony. "Replacement protocol initiated. Driver non-compliance exceeds tolerance." The passenger grabbed my arm, not roughly, but firmly. "Move," they hissed. "Now." I yanked free. "You said refusing was good." They didn't look at me. "I said it was rare." The drivers began walking, slowly, not rushing. They didn't need to. The exits sealed themselves, concrete sliding down with a grinding sound that rattled my teeth. The app screamed with vibration. "Fare locked. Driver termination pending." I backed away instinctively. The drivers kept coming. As they moved, I saw what the depot had done to them. Some had tire tracks burned into their shoes. Some still wore seatbelts like sashes. One woman's hands were fused into the shape of a steering wheel, fingers curled permanently. A man stepped closer than the others. I recognized him, not from the depot, from my life. Marcus, or what was left of him. His eyes were cloudy, unfocused, but when he spoke, his voice was unmistakable. "Hey," he said gently. "Dispatch says you're confused." My chest felt like it was caving in. "You're dead," I whispered. He smiled sadly. "That's what they call reassignment." Behind him, more drivers fanned out, blocking every path. The passenger moved in front of me. For the first time, they raised their voice. "Stand down," they ordered. The drivers stopped. Dispatch crackled. Unauthorized interference detected. The passenger didn't turn around. I've trained replacements before. This one isn't ready. A pause. Static hissed through the depot. Then dispatch spoke again, colder. Correction, this one is dangerous. The map above us flared red.
On the surface, Lena Morales' phone buzzed. I saw it, felt it, like a pressure in my skull. A connection opening. My own phone buzzed in my pocket, not the app. A message, unknown contact. Lena, I don't know how you got this number, but you were in my dream last night, and now I can see the streets changing. My breath caught. She wasn't just remembering, she was seeing. I typed back with shaking thumbs. Me, don't tell anyone. They're listening. 3 dots appeared instantly. Lena, too late. They're already outside. The depot shook violently. Above us, the city map fractured, layers slipping out of alignment, streets duplicated, blocks vanished, red dots multiplied uncontrollably. Dispatch's voice stuttered, containment failing, public awareness rising. The drivers around us began to convulse. Some clutched their heads, others screamed as their bodies tried to return to the cars against their will. Marcus staggered backward, grabbing his chest. "They're pulling me," he gasped. "They're pulling all of us." The passenger turned to me, urgent now. "You've broken the loop. That means you can leave it." I stared at them. "You said there was no way out." "There isn't," they replied, "for drivers." Then they did something I didn't expect. They pulled off their badge. It hit the concrete with a sharp clang. "For dispatchers," they said quietly, "there's one." They pressed the badge into my hand. The metal was warm, pulsing. "What does this do?" I asked. The passenger met my eyes. "It lets you lie to the city." The depot began collapsing, cars sinking into the floor, routes dissolving mid-air. Drivers screamed as their outlines blurred, bodies being dragged back into their vehicles like sketches erased halfway through. Dispatch roared, "Unauthorized transfer, identity breach imminent." The passenger shoved me toward a narrow service corridor I hadn't noticed before, hidden between 2 rows of cars. "Find Lena," they said. "She's the anchor now." "And you?" I asked. They smiled, the first real smile I'd seen. "I'll slow it down." The corridor door slammed shut behind me. Darkness swallowed everything. Then, light. I stumbled out into the rain. Harbor Point, real this time. Cars honked, sirens wailed somewhere distant, people shouted. My phone buzzed again. "Lena, I can see it, under the streets. It's sick." I typed back, "So are we. That means it can be hurt." Behind me, beneath the asphalt, the collectors screamed, not in anger, but in fear. Because for the first time in its existence, the city had a witness who wasn't alone, and Root Black was no longer in control. The rain felt different on the surface, colder, heavier, real. I stood under a flickering streetlight, one that should have made me freeze, but this time, nothing happened. No warning buzz, no app command, just rain hitting asphalt and running toward the gutter like it always had. The badge in my hand pulsed once, then went still. My phone buzzed again. "Lena. I'm at Calder and 8th. I can hear it breathing." That intersection, the first assigned pickup, the place where the man had vanished. My stomach tightened. "Me. Stay where you are. Don't go underground. Don't follow anything that looks like a shortcut." 3 dots. Then, "It's not calling me. It's leaking." I started running. As I moved, the city stuttered, not visually, subtly. Streetlights turned on a fraction too late. Crosswalk signals skipped from red to flashing without passing through green.
A bus drove past with no passengers, driver staring straight ahead like he was afraid to blink. I passed a storefront window and caught my reflection. For half a second, it wasn't me. It was layered, my face overlapping another, older, thinner, eyes hollowed by years underground. The reflection blinked. So did I. The badge warmed again. I understood now. Dispatchers didn't control the city. They edited it. I reached Calder and 8th. Police tape fluttered in the rain, freshly strung. A cruiser idled nearby, lights off. 2 officers stood under an awning, talking quietly, glancing at the storm drain every few seconds, like they didn't want to look too long. Lena stood across the street, hood up, phone in her hand. She saw me immediately. Not my face, me. Her eyes widened with recognition that had nothing to do with memory. "You're wrong," she said as soon as I reached her. I blinked. "About what?" "This isn't a city problem," she said. "It's a story problem." The ground beneath us shuddered, just once, like a warning knock from below. I stared at her. "You can see it too." She nodded. "Ever since I dreamed you." A pause. "Ever since I dreamed the roots." She crouched and pressed her palm against the wet asphalt. "I can feel where it's thin, where it's been patched too many times." The storm drain rattled, not lifting, just rattling, like something inside was turning over, restless. I pulled her back. "Don't touch it." She stood, rain plastering her hair to her face. "Do you know what an anchor is?" she asked. I shook my head. "In old ships, anchors didn't just stop movement, they changed direction. They gave the water something solid to push against." My phone buzzed. The app, silent since the depot, lit up again. But it wasn't Route Black. No black line, no fare bar, just text. "Dispatcher mode, limited access. City edit, permitted, minor." My breath caught. Lena leaned closer, eyes locked on the screen. "You can rewrite small things, can't you?" she said. "I think so," I said slowly. "Good," she replied, "because I can see where to write." The storm drain cover jumped. The officers across the street froze. One of them whispered, "Did you feel that?" I raised the phone. The badge in my pocket burned. "What do we change?" I asked. Lena didn't hesitate. "The rules." I stared at her.
"The city survives because people believe the rules are fixed," she continued. "Routes, authority, disappearances, forgetting." Another shudder, stronger. A low, wet sound rolled up from beneath the street. "What rule do we break?" I asked. She pointed at the drain. "The oldest one." My phone vibrated violently. A warning flashed. "Major edit detected. Risk high." Dispatch's voice crackled through the speaker, weak, fragmented. "You do not understand." I spoke over it. I typed, slowly, deliberately. I changed one line, just one, from "unresolved cases eligible for collection" to "unresolved cases eligible for witness." The ground went silent. The storm drain stopped moving. The officers gasped as if the air had been sucked from their lungs. Then, a scream echoed from below. Not a collector, not an organ. Human, multiple, layered. Voices rising through the concrete like bubbles through water. Names, hundreds of them. The drain cover exploded upward, flipping onto the sidewalk with a metallic crash. Darkness spilled out, but not the hungry kind, the empty kind. Lena grabbed my arm. "They're coming back," she whispered. "Not alive, but remembered." Dispatch shrieked. "Rewrite violation. Anchor detected. City integrity failing." The lights along the block went out one by one, not flickering, gone. Every window in every building went dark at once, and in that sudden blackness, something massive shifted beneath the city, not recoiling, turning. Lena looked up at me, rain streaming down her face, eyes alight with terror and awe. "It knows," she said, "and now it's choosing." My phone buzzed one final time, not an alert, a question. Who gets to remember? Behind us, the street cracked. A seam opened in the asphalt, glowing faintly from below. And from deep underground, a new sound rose. Not the collector's hunger, but the city asking.
The question hung on my screen like a loaded gun. Who gets to remember? The rain slowed, not stopped, slowed, each drop hanging in the air a fraction too long before falling, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Lena stared at the glowing seam in the asphalt. The crack widened, just enough to leak a dull amber light from below. It wasn't fire, it wasn't electricity, it was memory. I could feel it pressing upward, faces, names, moments that never made the news, never got flowers, never got justice. Dispatch's voice was barely holding together now, syllables overlapping like a skipping record. "You cannot allow uncontrolled recall," it hissed. "Memory saturation will destabilize." I cut it off. "Like the depot?" I said. "Like the drivers you buried?" Silence. Then something new. Not fear, anger. "You were not meant to decide," Dispatch said. "You were meant to rout." Lena stepped closer to the crack. "I think," she said softly, "it's been deciding for a long time." The ground shuddered again. Across the street, the two officers staggered as if hit by vertigo. One of them dropped to a knee, clutching his head. "I remember her," he whispered. "My sister. She went missing in '09. I forgot." The other officer stared at his hands like they didn't belong to him. "They told me there was no case. They told me she never existed." Behind us, apartment windows flickered on one by one. People stepped out onto balconies, phones raised, faces pale and confused. Voices rose. Names were being spoken again. The badge in my pocket burned like it was trying to cauterize itself. Lena looked at me. "This is the last edit you'll get," she said. "After this, it won't be small anymore." I nodded. I already knew. The app pulsed, urging me to choose. Two new options appeared beneath the question. A, limited recall, controlled, gradual. B, full recall, immediate, unfiltered. My chest felt too tight to breathe. "What happens if we limit it?" I asked. Lena didn't look away from the crack. "The city survives, mostly." A pause. "And the truth gets rationed." "And full recall?" She swallowed. "People remember everything the city made them forget." I thought of the depot, the drivers trapped in looping moments, Marcus, the man who ran, the child on the bike. I thought of all the missing posters that quietly came down when no one was looking. "All at once?" I asked. Lena nodded. "There will be panic, violence, grief, lawsuits, riots." Then she met my eyes. "But it will never be able to hide again." Dispatch screamed through the phone. "This is not balance. This is collapse." The crack widened further. Hands pressed up from below, not physically, but as impressions in the light, like shadows pushing against paper. Voices spilled out now, overlapping, desperate to be heard. "My name is... I was here. Don't forget me again." I raised the phone. My thumb hovered.
I thought of something the passenger had said a lifetime ago. Cities grow heavy. I made my choice. I tapped B. The moment my thumb left the screen, the city screamed.
Every streetlight in Harbor Point turned on at once, flooding the night with blinding white light. Car alarms detonated up and down the block. Phones buzzed in every pocket, every apartment, every bar, every hospital room. People collapsed to their knees as memories slammed back into them like tidal waves. The crack in the street burst open. Light surged upward, not destroying the road, but rewriting it. The storm drains became mouths. The tunnels became throats. The collectors, those buried organs, howled as the memories they'd been feeding on were ripped away. Dispatch's voice fractured completely. No, this city cannot. The badge in my pocket went cold. Dead. The app went dark. Gone. For the first time since Root Black found me, there were no instructions. Lena grabbed my arm as the ground steadied. The light receded. The crack sealed itself, leaving only a scar in the asphalt like a healed wound. The rain resumed its normal rhythm. Sirens wailed in the distance. People cried openly in the street. Names were being shouted, embraced, mourned. The city was loud again, alive. I exhaled shakily. "Is it over?" I asked. Lena didn't answer right away. She was staring down the street at a familiar black sedan parked under a perfectly normal streetlight. The passenger sat inside, alone. They looked smaller now, less defined, as if without the city's permission, they were struggling to stay real. They met my gaze through the windshield, gave a small nod. Then the car faded. Not vanished, just forgotten. Lena turned back to me. "No," she said, "it's free." My phone buzzed. Not the app, a voicemail. No timestamp, no number. I pressed play. A child's voice filled the speaker, clear, alive. "Hi," it said. "They said you wouldn't remember me, but you do now, right?" I closed my eyes. Tears burned behind them. "Yes," I whispered. "I remember." The voice smiled. "Good," it said, "because now it's your turn to tell the stories." The call ended. The city breathed, and for the first time, Root Black had no road left to follow.